This is a rare Irish album, an Irish jazz album from 1965. Executive Suite, Jim Doherty Trio. Now, Jim Doherty is a well-known Irish pianist. His name is synonymous with jazz. He's a big name in Ireland, although, well, he was a big name. Now, this album, only one pressing, it's in mono, and it's a slightly odd record because there are 16 tracks, 13 of which are vocal. So, and essentially it's a vocal harmony album. If you are familiar with the Bachelors, a group that used to be big in the 60s, 70s, can't remember. It doesn't sound like jazz. You know, I bought this as a jazz record. I brought it home and I put it on my turntable, and my reaction was, oh my God, what's this? So it's vocal music, sounds something like the Bachelors, but it's actually lounge music. It's vocal lounge music. Doherty and his two comrades, and I don't know who they are, their names don't mean anything to me, but they were doing hotel work. They were literally playing in the lounge of a hotel. And I suppose as a jazz musician in Ireland, certainly, you had to earn a living, and there was no great demand for jazz. So presumably he decided to do sort of lounge music, vocal lounge music. But the first time I heard it, I thought it was awful, and it's literally taken me several years for me to warm to it. But even then, it's not a great record. It's not a classic record, but it's rare insofar as it's Irish and quote unquote jazz. It's an Irish jazz group. The three instrumentals are quite funky, quite good jazz. So it's my head's every time I do this, I put on a camera, I forget everything I wanted to say, and when this is over, I remember all the things I should have said. But it's a part of Irish jazz history, and given the fact that there are literally only a handful of Irish jazz albums ever released, given that fact, it's highly collectible. It's not worth big money, but it's highly collectible. And one of the nice things about collecting Irish jazz is you can, without too much trouble, you can end up having the entire set because it's such a small number of albums. And this is one of those albums, you sort of have to have it if you're into Irish jazz. Now, as I said, the first time I heard it, I thought, oh my God, a total waste of money. And it really has taken me years. And it's only really in the last year. And I can't remember when I actually first bought it, maybe 7, 8, maybe 9 years ago. But it's really only in the last year that I've begun to like it. And somebody has downloaded the full album on YouTube. So if you want to listen to the whole thing, you find it on YouTube. Now, it's an interesting thing, not about the album itself, but I was thinking about this, the fact that I didn't like it when I first heard it. And it literally took me years to get to a stage where I began to like it. It struck me that back in the day, if you went out to buy an album, let's say it was a psych album, progressive psych, or an interesting jazz album, well, you were buying music that you never heard on the radio. So you didn't know what the album sounded like, but you bought it anyhow, and you brought it home, and you might love it, And then again, you mightn't particularly like it at all. But then 6 months later, a year later, after a while, you might grow into it. And having grown into it, you might find yourself going down paths of discovery that you never would have gone down before through that one album. Whereas today, younger people, they go into a shop, if they are buying vinyl at all, they'll see an album. If they're not familiar with it, out will come their phone. They'll listen to a quick sample. If it doesn't sound good, they'll put it down. And I can honestly say that some of the best albums and some of the best jazz I've heard is stuff that I wasn't necessarily mad about the first time I heard it. And some music that I value really highly now, I positively didn't like it. And if it had been possible for me to sample it before buying it, years and years ago, I would have sampled it and not bought it and deprived myself of all that wonder of discovering a new type of music. So that's really all I wanted to say. I've only got 4 copies of this. 4 copies. One of which is a test pressing, which is nice to have. And in actual fact, I'm going to make myself a cup of coffee now and sit down and listen to it. But I love the cover. This cover, I say 1965, and has a very, you can't get the sense of, with album covers, as you know yourself, you really have to hold them in your hand. But this, it has, the mid-60s, the sharp suits, this sort of executive hotel room. It has a distinct sort of, that James Bond sort of 60s, swinging London sort of touch to it, or swinging England. I think it's a wonderful cover. Look great framed, absolutely great, I think. But I'm going to sit down now. I'm going to play it over there on my planer too, and make myself a cup of coffee and listen to it. So there you are, Jim Doherty, Executive Suite, Decca label, 1965. You can hear it on YouTube. As I say, somebody's already uploaded it. If you like jazz, you won't like this the first time. You'll probably think like, "My good God, that's awful." But it's an interesting album. And if you're interested in jazz and you see a copy around to get it, it's not an expensive album. And so there you are.